Hey, it's Christy from the Mountainside Bride, and today I have a video tutorial for you today to show you how I made these really cute heart-shaped things that I ended up using in my centerpieces at WPPI when I worked on that styled shoot with Lauren from Every Last Detail, Stephanie from Fabulous, and Megan from Glamour and Grace. And so this is a tutorial showing you how I made those. Okay, first things first are the materials that I used, and they're pretty simple. I just got some paint chips from the hardware store for free. I have embossing materials, including embossing ink, some embossing powder, and an embossing gun. I have a stamp, just a little teeny tiny stamp. It says, "Oh Happy Day" on it. I have a die cutting machine, and I prefer to use the electronic eBosser. And this is all electronic, and the reason why that I like to use this is that you can use it with any brand of die cut embossing folders, and also you can use it with the Craftwell's L letterpress kit. So you're also going to need some dies of your choice, and today I'm using Sysex, just a regular thin cut die. You're also going to need a hole punch, some needle nose pliers, and some copper. So this is pretty straightforward. The eBosser comes with instructions on which plates to use with which brand, so make sure you consult that. I tend to cut these paint chips about 2 at a time. Just line everything up. A plate always goes on top of the eBosser. And you just send it through. Everything's automatic with this thing. That cracking with the eBosser is just the A plate, and it's made to do that. So if you hear that cracking, don't worry about it. Okay, so there are our heart shapes, all nice and cut out. Your next step is to do your embossing, and I like to lay a sheet of paper down so that I don't waste any of the embossing powder, and I'll show you why in a minute. You just take your embossing ink and a stamp of your choice. I'm going to use Happy Day, but I used a variety of stamps, including I Love You and things like that. So you just press into your embossing ink the way you would any ink, and just stamp onto your heart anywhere you want. You want to move fairly quickly with this embossing ink because you don't want it to dry out. So I'm just going to take my embossing powder, I'm going to take copper, and I'm just going to dump a whole bunch. Cover that right up. Don't worry about wasting this powder. We'll put it all back in the jar with that piece of paper. You want it to be nice and covered. Dust off the excess. And if you want to, you can clean it up. Anywhere embossing powder sticks will be embossed. So if you want a really neat look, you might want to use a Q-tip or something else to clean this up. I like a nice rustic look, so I don't worry too much about a little bit of a mess. I just like to get that little frame rubbed away. Oops. Like I said, I'm not too much of a perfectionist. I like that handmade look. And then you just take and put your embossing powder back in the jar. And you can see that this will last a long time. I've had this powder for about a year, and I've barely even put a dent into it. Okay, so after that's done, all you want to do is just melt the embossing powder onto your piece of paper with an embossing gun. And this is just a heat gun. It's just like a little blow dryer. Be careful not to burn your fingers or anything. It does get hot and heat up. And you'll know that you're done when it's nice and shiny and becomes raised like a penny. Oh, it's shiny. Okay, next steps are pretty simple. You just want to punch a hole somewhere in your heart. And this is where we're going to thread the wire through. Where you punch your hole will determine at what angle it hangs. And you're just going to take a nice thin gauge copper wire. I used about an 18 gauge copper wire, and I cut it to about 12 inches. And I use the cutting blade on my needle nose pliers, but you can also use a strong pair of kitchen shears. And basically you just thread the copper through the hole, and then use your needle nose pliers to turn that copper wire back in on itself, so it closes up in a circle like that. And then you can just put a nice little curve in it, and it's ready to go into your bouquet. Now, one last thing, if this is going on a centerpiece or whatnot, there is the barcode on the back of the paint chip, so you might want to just cover that glue it on with a pretty piece of paper, or even just spray paint the back gold or silver or some pretty color. And that's it. Pretty easy.